Thank you. And before we move to public comment, we have some new people to introduce. I'm very excited about this. First, many of you have already met Dr. Ken Rumpus, and he's been a joy to work with already. Couple things. He has dedicated his career to public education, serving over 20 years in teaching and administrative roles. He began serving as the Francis Howell School District Superintendent in 2022, joining the district as Deputy Superintendent at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. He also served 13 years in Rittner, 4 years as an Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Leadership Development. Before that, he was a Rittner Middle School Assistant Principal and Principal. He's also worked in the St. Louis Public School systems. He began his career in education as a teacher in the Melville and St. Louis Public School Districts. Welcome. We are thrilled to have you joining us. We also have 2 new members of the cabinet, which we're very excited about. First of all, Mr. Scott Cook. He's our new Chief Financial Officer. He comes to us from Mount Vernon, where he was a superintendent, and while he was there, voters approved the largest bond issue in the district's history. He also oversaw the financing and construction of projects that included building a new early learning center, a significant expansion to an agricultural education center, installation of secure entries, and numerous deferred maintenance projects. Also, during his time there, he prioritized financial decisions to allow for substantial investments in professional and support staff salaries over 9 years. Welcome. We're very excited to have you here. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Brian Rich is our new Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. He has more than 16 years in various administrative roles in Francis Howell, Rittner, and U-City school districts. He recently served as Director of Human Resources for Francis Howell. Under his leadership, the Human Resource Department revised their systems for harassment reporting and student-teacher placement. He also worked to promote employee recruitment by strengthening and growing new and existing university partnerships. Again, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. And since Dr. Rumpus was the one who hired them, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to any of that.
Thank you, President Motika. I'm thrilled to welcome both Dr. Rich and Mr. Cook. I should say to our community that while he did pass the largest bond issue, we did not bring him here to do that. It's just a celebration of where he was at previously. But both Dr. Rich and Mr. Cook bring 24, 25 years of experience and commitment to public school education, varied experiences both at the classroom level, which we know is incredibly important when you get into leadership roles, also at the school level, and both have significant experience at the central office level. So we're excited to have your leadership and to be a part of the team. And really, I just want to add that they round out and really add to what is an incredible leadership team that is already here. I've been here just about a month now, almost a month. And working with these 7 individuals is really amazing. Their commitment to this district, their knowledge and expertise, and their commitment to making sure that every student in the Kirkwood School District is successful, and doing that through helping our staff. You can feel that and you hear that every single day and see it in their actions. So thank you for the warm welcome from the leadership team, the cabinet that we have. And Dr. Rich and Mr. Cook, I really think you will add to and help build out that team. So thank you.
And now we have an established item for public comment session. During public comments, any citizen of the Kirkwood School District may make a statement or address the board concerning issues pertaining to Kirkwood School District. We have a set period time of 30 minutes. No individual will be permitted to speak more than once during this period. Speakers are not to address the board concerning specific personnel issues. And we will not directly respond to a speaker during the meeting, but if a response is required, either Dr. Rumpus or I will follow up after the meeting. And you each have 3 minutes to address us. Our first is team Mary Beth Kessler and Maria Totski.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Rumpus, and district leadership. On behalf of the Kirkwood National Educators Association, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Mary Beth Kessler, music teacher at Robinson Elementary, and this is Maria Tutsky, second grade teacher at Robinson Elementary, and we are honored to serve as the co-presidents for the KNEA.
As the new school year begins, we want to express our deep appreciation for your continued support of students, staff, and our schools. Public education, we know, is both complex and incredibly meaningful, and we're proud to partner with you in this work.
We're excited for the year ahead and committed to strengthening the collaborative relationship between our union and the district. Whether it's classroom visits, attending concerts or art shows, taking a meeting over coffee, thanks Dr. Rich, or lunch, thanks Dr. Rumpus, or a birthday email from Dr. Rumpus, your presence matters and reminds us we're all in this together.
Our teachers didn't slow down over the summer either. Many continued their professional learning, presenting at national conferences, completing letters coursework, leading through the Guiding Coalition, and pursuing advanced degrees in learning. Our advocacy also continued. Our KNEA Vice President, Dr. Ashley Luther, who's a KHS English teacher, participated in national level discussions at the NEA Representative Assembly. NEA also fought and helped recover more than $5 of the $7 billion that was initially withheld from school funding. Finally, several of our members attended the Missouri NEA conference to learn how we can protect and strengthen public schools right here in Missouri.
This year, KNEA's priorities reflect our commitment to supporting a thriving learning environment for all. We hope to strengthen trust and communication between teachers and administrators, support consistent due process and respectful interactions among everyone, create clear paths for horizontal movement and professional growth, utilize our collective bargaining agreement as a tool for partnership and collaboration, a roadmap, if you will, that brings teachers and administrators together. We also hope to follow the lead of neighboring districts, Brentwood and Melville, by realigning the salaries of our colleagues who lost pay in 2016-17 due to a frozen step. And finally, we hope to promote fair and transparent extra pay for extra duty compensation across all school levels.
We believe these goals not only support our educators, but strengthen the future of our district. We're ready to work side by side with you to bring them to life. Thank you again for your leadership, partnership, and commitment to Kirkwood students and staff. We really are looking forward to a great year ahead.
Thank you. And we also have our next public comment is from Tom Pacek. Tacek, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Tacek, and I'm here representing an organization called Kirkwood for Everyone. And we are a local citizens group that's advocating for additional attainable housing here in Kirkwood. The problem of attainable housing is a growing one here in Kirkwood and throughout our St. Louis community. All you have to do is drive around Kirkwood and see one more small home torn down after another and being replaced by $1 million mega mansion to understand that. That impacts our entire community, the diversity of our community, and in our schools, both economic and racial diversity. And this is what we're concerned about. We've been talking to the City Council about ways that we can try to fix the problem of what is growing, what we call missing middle housing, that kind of middle section of housing that's being lost in Kirkwood. We are starting a petition to try to get more people in Kirkwood to show their concern and support of this, and we have a petition that's online right now that there's a QR code, which I will make that available for people to sign online. So that's the main thing that I wanted to speak to you about, is to try and get more support from the community to demonstrate to the City Council that this is a concern for many of our residents and students. We're seeing many older residents of Kirkwood being forced out of their homes because they want to downsize and they can't stay in Kirkwood. We're seeing many children of current residents who cannot afford to move back into Kirkwood. They grew up here, they can't afford to live here because there's just no good starter homes, reasonably priced starter homes. So this is an ongoing problem. In addition, we've got two upcoming presentations that we are doing for the community. On August 25th, the Kirkwood Public Library, we're doing a presentation on accessory dwelling units. If you know what those are often referred to as granny flats or mother-in-law units, but they are actual units that can be added to an existing house and can be turned into rental property that helps generate income. It's another way for people to stay in their homes and also to generate additional housing. So we're going to talk about what that is, what Kirkwood permits and what Kirkwood doesn't permit, and what citizens need to know, because very few people in Kirkwood know that's even an option. The very last thing we're doing is on September 23rd, we're doing a presentation on a community land trust. If you don't know what that is, there is one that was started recently in Webster Groves. The Community Land Trust is a nonprofit that we're hoping to start with other community leaders that then purchase our given homes in Kirkwood, and then instead of selling the home, the trust maintains ownership of the land but only sells the house. That makes the home much more affordable for the residents, and then they sell it back to the trust when they move out. It's a complicated subject. It's an important one. It's one that many communities have started to try to get more people who are able to purchase and live in Kirkwood or in the community at what it would normally cost at a market rate. So that's three things that we have. All of that's in writing here. I'll pass that around.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 4.02, approval of agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda for the July 28th, 2025 meeting as presented.
So moved, Andrews.
Second, Shern.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. 5.01, consent agenda approval. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda items 5.02 through 5.11 as presented and/or amended.
So moved, Andrews.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. 6.01, financial statements. We need a motion to approve the financial statements for June 2025 as presented.
So moved, Shern.
And second, Andrews.
Well, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to share this evening on the financial statements. So operating revenues in June, a little over 2.3 million revenues in June, and it's not traditionally a big month for current local taxes, just 114,000 there. Our final Prop C payment for FY25, 403,000. 134 state revenue was a little over 1.2 million. So everything going into that is basic formula, classroom trust, transportation, ECSE state revenue, PAT. We had a couple, 3 small DESI grants that played into that as well. So in July, it's typical to take a look back at FY25, and the operating revenues for FY25, you'll note, are in the financial memo as well. District revenues totaling just over 93 million, a little short of what Mike Ramey had projected there. A couple of big contributors, I think. It looked like their Proposition C had about a $530,000 prior year correction, which is not uncommon. It's one of the more volatile things you can predict, and so there were predictions made about what we thought we might get in Prop C, and came in a little bit lower than that. I think that a lot of districts are going to experience that as the conversion to weighted average membership and weighted ADA get closer to each other, and it seems like that happened to Kirkwood over the last year. A little bit less in earnings investment or investment earnings as well as compared to what was projected. We have begun working with a firm that has some long-term investments going for the district, and while those investments are showing yields, that money is not yet deposited back into our account, so that projection of revenue is not back home with us, but it is doing quite well in our new relationship there. So I would still categorize FY25 as a very strong year for revenues, a little bit lower than projected, but still very good. On the expenditure side for June, just under 13.5 million expenditures in June. A big month for summer school checks going out, and SRO costs were in that second semester SRO costs as well. And then the district cellular enhancement project, $249,000 payment there. So a relatively larger expenditure amount there for June. For FY25, total operating expenditures just under 90 million. So expenditures came in a little bit below projections too. So you always like to see that if you're in my seat, those things happen. So another very strong year there. It looked like several accounts just came in under projection, which is always a good thing. So unofficially, the district fund balance at 46.41 as we close out FY25. Great position for the district to be in. I feel fortunate to be part of a district doing so well financially. So if we look through the other funds that you have there in the memo, you can see activity and maintenance were increased very slightly. The technology fund balance went up by $630,000. Supplies and equipment costs lower there too than expected, so that's another positive. The KECC fund balance grew, but a little bit slower than projected, and just kind of took a look at that to see Adventure Club receipts were a little lower than projected, but again, not significantly there as well. Prop I balance, waiting on that last payment for the district cellular project that's coming up here pretty soon, I think. And then our Prop R money continues to dwindle down. I know that was a goal of Mr. Romay as he was heading out to get a lot of those projects complete, and we're well on our way to that, and that's headed down as well. Lastly, I think on my list is the self-funded insurance fund balance. That's a new one for me. Increased by 1.3 million as compared to from the previous year. So that balance is healthier than it was, that I understand, but still bears watching, I think. We will have a couple of months here with lower deposits as we transition to a couple of months where really the only deposits are coming from 12-month employees. And so when the teachers come back, that deposit will get higher. We'll just want to continue to keep an eye on that as well. But excited to see that balance higher and healthier than it had been. So any questions on that?
We'll start, Ms. Andrews.
Just welcome.
Thank
We're glad
you.
that you're here.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you.
very nice. We need to vote to approve the financial statements. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Now we move on to class size reports, 7.01.
Thank you for having me, Board of Education. I'm thrilled to be here to present this as an updated class size and staffing update for those streaming at home. Recognize that this board has seen different iterations of this slideshow, so if it were to appear that I'm moving through some of the slides fairly quickly, it's to offer the grace of this board that most of the fine print not only have you been over, but not much of it has changed except for the numbers. So with that being said, just to briefly reconnect us to the work, this historical context for this work started in the mid-20-teens as a cost savings plan. The move was to keep an eye out on class size projections, utilizing enrollment, utilizing projections for kindergarten, making sure that there are clear thresholds for what we are accepting when it comes to maximum class sizes, and when those class sizes are all exceeding, or excuse me, when even one class size amongst a grade level is exceeding the max, the agreement would be that we move to add a class size. So to that end, this is a reminder of those class size guidelines per grade level, keeping in mind that it is lower at the kindergarten level, first through second grade, then moves up to 22. Third, fourth, and fifth, which will be the topic of conversation here this evening with our elementary slides. Those max are at 25, and then as you move up to the secondary level. Some adjustments to standard operating procedures to add a little bit of relief for our principals, especially at that elementary level, who follow these board meetings with great intent, hoping that no classes are being collapsed, but in fact, as you'll see this evening, the hope would be that when they are on the threshold of potentially going to another class size, that something potentially could be done, as you'll see there's some pinch points here in the data this evening. And then this is just a slide that was presented to the board, again, all of this having been presented before. As I respect the work that has been done by my successor, Dr. Fields, to present a very clear standard of when each of these grade levels and the sections that they serve will move to an additional section. So from there, we go to the numbers. These numbers were polled last July 22nd, so they could be offered to the Board of Education, keeping an eye on these numbers throughout the summer. We see that Kaiser is in a position, a total enrollment of 531 students, with no particular pinch points. This will make sense as we advance to our second slide in North Glendale. I'll draw your attention to North Glendale's 4th grade, where we see 3 of the 4 sections already at the max, and in fact, 1 section away from approaching the max with enrollment. Of course, it would be that additional kid beyond that, additional student, that would push us over that threshold and needing that 5th section. Robinson is in a similar situation where they are standing with 3 sections at the 5th grade. 2 of those sections already at the maximum, just one below the max, total on the far right for Robinson. Tillman is in a position that there is nothing in red. Their class sizes and their enrollment is there. Westchester being our last elementary school now that we see on currently in their 2nd grade. 5 total sections currently, 4 of those 5 already at the max, awaiting that next student to push them to the max in all 5, and then the additional student would then put them in a position to be searching for a 6th section and a certified teacher ready to give his or her best to our 2nd grade kiddos at Westchester. Say all that to say, bringing this to an update is that we do have, as you've seen, these 3 sections where there is 1 student from reaching the maximum and 1 additional student from creating an additional section. After monitoring these enrollment sizes throughout the summer and sharing these class sizes with the Board of Education, and as I've learned from, you watch on YouTube and you get a lot of history from these meetings. What I've gleaned is that this board has in fact challenged the leadership here at KSD to think outside the box. If there's anything that can be done, what I'm hearing from this board is that you are willing to do just that. And so a bit of an update for those following at home is the idea that as of now, all 3 of these schools indeed have the space, and we have built contingency plans into our budget, and that I'm happy to announce that at the end of last week, we received approval from this board to open up these 3 sections, and they are currently posted. Beyond just posting in July, I'm happy to report that having worked with our administrators at these 3 buildings, Westchester, North Glendale, and Robinson, all 3 administrators have some great leads. They were kind of hoping they would be here. Candidly, they were hoping that the numbers would push them to the point that they would have to move on this, but considering that we have indeed thought outside the box and proactively put ourselves in a position to get out and find the best and the brightest so that they're ready to greet our Kirkwood kiddos next month and ready to give their educational best, that we are in a position where we are happy that these particular classes, which I will say, having gleaned a little bit of anecdotal information from these principals, bring other aspects to the table for success for kids that go just beyond raw enrollment numbers, right? So I think I know we've set up these 3 elementary schools for success. I know I speak for these 3 principals when I say we appreciate this move, and just happy to report that this is where we stand currently. So what had been previously shared, our initial updates on elementary sections, with our total sections sitting at 126. An update to this now is that these additional sections at these 3 elementary schools, this has pushed our total sections to 129. This is 1 more section overall than we had at elementary last year. So we're actually right back in line with kind of what would be that annual rollover. I want to just reassure the board, this is a great fix for now. What we do moving forward is something that I look forward to digging into and finding ways to proactively communicate with this group of leaders here. We are all stewards to this community's finite resources, and I don't take the grace of this move lightly. This is a great gesture to make sure that 3 elementaries are in a great position to be on a strong start for the school year, but it is beholden on me and the team in the HR office to give accurate, proactive data so that we can, be as early in this work as we can be moving forward. And so to that, I just say thank you. Again, this slide offers a up-to-date elementary student total enrollment and a closer look at kindergarten sections is a reminder that we are still dealing with Dr. Coffrin projections, and I believe that intent is to still work with Dr. Coffrin moving forward. A little bit of work to do in North Glendale and Westchester to meet those projections, but I can obviously show you that Dr. Coffrin was pretty spot on when it came to Robinson and not too far off at this juncture at Tillman and at Kaiser. So this is a slide that just shows that I think we, in terms of an enrollment projection, we could, Dr. Coffrin's data looks to be pretty close to our reality, and with enrollment still coming in as we speak. And as a former secondary guy, I don't want to leave them till the very end, but our secondary folks as well, obviously not as many implications in terms of staffing for this meeting, but just wanted to share those enrollment numbers, again, updated as of July 22nd last week, because they are also ready and raring to go for our kids next month when we get back in school. So I am ready to field any questions for the board again, moving quickly through slides you've seen before, but taking our time to answer any clarifying questions for you at this time.
I want to provide one clarification just for the YouTube recording, that we did not receive approval from the board last week, that there was no meeting. We communicated with the board our intent to add these positions because they were already built into the budget as part of the contingency. We were able to do that and share that information with the board, but I didn't want anybody thinking that there was a meeting last week. And Dr. Rich also mentioned the data that we received from Mr. Coffrin. This is a year, though, that we do go out for a request for proposal to look at all sorts of providers, and so that, we very likely could still work with him, but this is a year where we'll be going out and looking at other options as well.
Thank you. Ms. Neiman.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate the time and attention that's been put into monitoring the class sizes, the number of sections that are needed, and very greatly appreciate the thoughtfulness that's been put into the decision to not just monitor those sections closely, but also to be thoughtful and creative about the approach that we're taking to make sure that for our kids, we are really ensuring that they get what they need. At the end of the day, that's what's, of course, most important, is making sure that the kids have the support that they need throughout the course of their education. This is 1 year. I know we've had a lot of conversations about the need to reevaluate the process and the factors that go into determining class sizes, but we also can't just continue to kind of push it forward and say, okay, we'll look at it next year, because each year counts for these kids. So really appreciate the leadership of Dr. Rumpus and Dr. Rich as well, and also the principals for providing their input, as well as our community members. We've had several community members reach out and be vocal about the other factors that come into play. So you mentioned, the interest and need for us to, as we roll forward, look at how we might process those sections differently and take into different considerations. So just want to express my appreciation for and support of that effort. So don't really have any questions, but do appreciate the consideration that y'all have put forward with that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Hepburn?
Thank you. This has been a hot button issue for me for a while, so I'm just so grateful to see just something that is common sense, and I really, really appreciate it. I also appreciate your comments that we're going to be looking, in the future at the process and digging in deeper, because I do, as you very, clearly stated and is totally appropriate, that we do have to keep track of resources, which I do want to say thank you to Ms. Andrews, because she was somebody that really helped make sure that we kept those contingency positions in the budget. And that really is one of the things that enabled us to do this. And so I just wanted to recognize that. So I just thank you. And I'm sure you're going to hear that a lot. So the last thing I will say is also thank you for skimming over slides that we've seen a million times.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate that. And I think probably a lot of people do. Thank you.
Mr. Caffey?
Yeah, a few quick comments. So I'm completely in support of this. Also looking at the SOP, some history going back to the beginning of the year, this board received many updates on the financial projections, and so I would just ask a few things as we look at the SOP, that how does that marry up against what those kind of projections showed us, and what some kind of semi-goals were stated about FTEs and what they would look like through just normal attrition, absolute normal attrition. and where we needed to be in the future. So that's a component. And then also, we had some very great discussion around kind of an ideal destination of not just numbers, but needs of the kids too. It's very complicated. How do you get there? Where does the data live? How do you identify it and how do you use it? But I wanted to make a plug for that ideal state as well. So thank you.
Ms. Shern? Ms. Andrews?
I'd just like to say thank you for really using that SOP to guide the change, because that's how we remain on track and kind of stay to the process and not add, we've got to have a process. And so I really appreciate that you added kind of some verbiage to the SOP. I would reiterate what Mr. Caffey said with regards to, let's really kind of try to think outside the box in terms of just all the different factors that go into what impacts the classroom, because it's not just number of kids. So welcome, and we are excited to have all of you here. Thanks.
And I will just say thank you again. Having the foresight to realize there are ways to do better by our kids. And it could seem very simple, we'll just add sections, but that's huge. So thank you. And I know our kids and parents and teachers will thank you as well. Okay, 7.02, you're still on the hot seat, the exit survey for staff. We switched things around a little bit.
All right. Okay, excited to present again to our Board of Ed, this time on exit surveys. Being that we are a destination district, it is still incumbent upon us to the relatively lower amount of folks that are leaving Kirkwood, the whys, the whats, the hows, and how do we do better year after year to retain the good people that may be considering other spaces and places. We want to keep them here in KSD. So to that end, it's a three-pronged rationale, really. Why exit surveys? First and foremost, why are people leaving? That's the easy part, right? But the second part really leads very quickly into the bigger question is, it's kind of the so what, now what? So we know why people might be leaving, so the people that are still with us, let's keep them. And that's about our retention. And I'll be sharing retention rates with this board in short order through an upcoming slide. I would say the bigger work, the more strategic work, that fun balcony work, we can step away and really kind of see this thing for how it impacts all sorts of different organizations or departments, not just in the HR field, but sharing this information with my colleagues on the cabinet. What are different ways that we can share out information that's specific to a department or a building or a school? How can we all be better to support the folks that are making a decision to go elsewhere? Onboarding is, sometimes a formal process when you're dealing with the phenomenal colleague of mine, Candace Harris, who specializes that in our HR department. Onboarding can be as simple as the first kid or teacher that you see when you enter on your first day when you're a nervous new educator in our midst, right? So we all contribute to the onboarding in KSD, and so it's not information that I want to keep siloed in the Human Resources Department. We all need to do our very best to make sure that this is a place that doesn't just attract great candidates, but retains them and supports them and builds them up, right? So to that end, our retention rates, I would say, are hovering where they've been in the very recent past. A slight dip with both support and certified staff retention, but right around those thresholds of the mid-80s with our support staff, and we're in the low 90s with our certified staff. As you see some of those huge swings, just reminding this board and some of the history resonates from the work that I was able to do at this time in a former district. Obviously, when we're looking at wildly swinging FTE rates and percentages, that's post-COVID, right? That's all the positions that needed to be created to care for our kiddos when we were in different phases of return. Happy to report, don't have very hard and fast data on this, but enough anecdotal information to share with you. When you're seeing, FTEs go from 403 to 385 and a retention rate that's in the low 70s, a lot of those folks were working with us in other capacities, and we were able to still filter them into some of the other roles. It was just roles that they stepped away from that we no longer needed post-COVID. So there's some stories behind those numbers as well. But I would say, putting hopefully COVID and all that entailed a little bit in our rear view, so to speak, we are looking now at retaining those numbers and growing on those numbers in the mid-80s and high 90 percentiles with our retention rate. These questions have not changed. I'm aware that this board has seen this presentation before, so I will just, help us to be efficient where we can be. These 8 questions are the quantitative questions that can be rated based on 1 through 6. It's very simple, quick answers, and 7 and 8 with a Likert scale, 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. And then we move into our qualitative data, which I'm excited to share with this board this evening. I included a couple additional slides for this year's presentation to kind of dig a little deeper into some of that qualitative work that was shared to us or with us by our exiting staff members. Data that I sit before you and have to own, but we really need to dig into where there is a massive dip, I would say this year, is in just surveys that were completed by those that left us. You can see very clearly that that is a major drop off as numbers were dwindling anyhow from a 5-year peak there in 21-22 when we had upwards of 43 certified teachers and 5 support staff members, a total of 48 completing the survey. 19 is not a big number. 19 is not a big number to be gaining information that is valuable to us to improve our organization. But I will also tell you, and just kind of use this as a caveat moving forward, it also led to some pretty wild, pretty dramatic swings in some of our ratings and some of our demographics. When you're dealing with 1 or 3 individuals from a certain demographic, it only takes 1 or 2 exiting for reasons that, it is the work that we do. Not everyone is going to leave pleased with every stakeholder in the district, but you'll see in a minute there's a couple of noticeable trends where that dipped, and I would tell you that although we want to be very responsive to all data that comes our way, the smaller the sample size, the bigger the swings with that. The trend of the numbers is not explained away by any change in the format. It is the same exit survey that has been issued, started with Dr. Fields and his team in that 2021 school year. It is still emailed out via Google form as soon as anybody announces their resignation or retirement. We do not issue this, as has been stated before, to those rare situations where an employee is terminated involuntarily, right? So, but anyone that does leave voluntarily, we ask of them what they can share with us to improve. And so as they share that with us, one thing that I will say is we did issue this survey out to as many, if not more, except for in 23-24 and 21-22. So the numbers of staff that received the survey were right where they typically were in the past. And in fact, we over the last 2 years, the department has tracked open rate, which is exactly what it sounds like. You get an email, do you interact with it in any kind of way? And we had a high percentage of people that at least looked at the questions. The fact that they chose not to fulfill the our ask of completing those questions, half of which would have taken them just a few seconds to do so, it's unfortunate. So we need to dig into that and figure out the why when it comes to those low participation rates. But a demographic gender breakdown, you see that skews very heavily female of the 19 people that completed the survey. Majority racial category is white, and then there's a large percentage of the feedback that we got this year was pre-K through 5, which typically that is our largest group, but this year that holds as well. And then those average years of experience tend to rise and fall, but we're right where we would have been compared to last year. So again, a lot of these metrics are the same, save for that participation rate. When asked about their overall experience at KSD, this is how things broke down by race, gender, by level, and by classification. But I would say again, there, when you drop that, that group, that is where some of those smaller numbers are represented and make a bigger impact. But having said that, I'll end with the fact that that's data we need to own, and we read all of these surveys and we learn what we can to be better for all of our staff members moving forward. We can see that there's a bit of a dip when it comes to the experience at the pre-K 5 level. But in some areas, we see this rate rising. So those are just some noted areas that, for those of you that looked at the data, I'm sure that jumped out at you as well. And again, that trend holds, that Likert scale, anything 2.5 and above swings towards a positive experience. So when you're looking at a 1.7, when it comes to support, that is something we need to take ownership of, take stock of, and recognize that, we don't want to replicate those experiences. With these employees having exited now, this is just what we can learn from our past, but we can be better moving forward into our future. Of these surveys that were completed, we break them down by the number of years that our former colleagues served, 1 to 5, 6 to 11, 12 to 19, and 20 and up. For reasons that I don't have enough data to speak to, that 12 to 19 year group is our lowest group. But again, when you talk about 11%, you're talking about 2 people out of 19. Just want to frame it, but I'll end with owning it. That's our data, and we need to be honest about it, learn from what we can. When we move into the qualitative feedback, this is where we can get into some of the, a little bit more voice allowed beyond the numbers. So this is where people are going. Of the 19 that responded, we have some folks that are looking at new opportunities for their career, and that just oftentimes leads to other opportunities in other districts. Retirement, and so when you look at that, those two things, are to be celebrated, really. So that's right there. That's 11 of your 19. But we did have 4 individuals, and some of that was expressed in some of that numeric data that I shared earlier, that did leave with some concerns, which is to say, had those concerns not been in place, they might still be with us. You'll see kind of a qualitative thread coming up about lack of hours for our support staff. We have folks that moved away, and then at least one colleague that self-identified that it was a family health issue that required them to step away from their work. Very few people leaving us for other so-called greener pastures, but if there are, those are the 4 districts that we lost employees to this year. Melville, Webster Groves. We have someone who is moving into SSD and moving to Pattonville to do that work, Parkway, and then someone that just admitted they were leaving to another district but wished to not share that data. So that's why that says not stated. So what are some of the trends? I am happy to report you will not see this italicized phrase at the end of any other hashtag, but I have to report to the board, even those that had negative to share, they had to take an opportunity to give a shout out to our kids. Every single exiting staff member loves Kirkwood kids. That much was crystal clear. Beyond that, we saw what's best about working in Kirkwood. Many people had very supportive leaders. They spoke about a welcoming staff and a caring community that felt family-oriented. They spoke about opportunities that people were flexible with their schedules, a district dedicated to educational innovation, a support for the arts, proud to be a part of a district with collective bargaining. And KTOC is definitely an organization that at least one individual gave credit for having a great experience here while they were here with us, and that, of course, is our Kirkwood Teachers of Color. Our qualitative feedback, and I kind of do this for effect, right? I'm sorry, advancing a little too quickly here. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, that's my button. Sorry, folks. So
There you go.
So when we look back here, this is what I was trying to do earlier. That second hashtag, supportive leadership. What's the least you like? So it depends, right? It depends on their perspective. Some people had great leader support. Some people did not. Some people bragged about flexibility of schedules. Some people said there was a lack of flexibility. The inability to access full-time status and benefits. You'll see this coming up. Slide after slide. We do have support staff that are not at full-time status, and that limits their access to full-time benefits. Just sharing out the data with this board. Lack of communication is something that we always want to take stock of. It came at the district and building level. It's a great opportunity for all of us to just, take stock at where we may, have opportunities to improve on always a nice problem to have. These are folks that want to get involved, roll up their sleeves, be part of policy work. Wanting to grow as teachers, but just feeling like in this climate, that the PD that was being offered, at least with someone, it was just, it's a lot, right? And I, having been at the building level and either led out or collaborated with C&I departments, there is an art to helping teachers understand that, this too can be done, right? So at least one individual shared that, that their threshold kind of tipped over at some point. But just the idea that impacted, their ability to kind of reflect on their time, is at least they're thinking along the terms of their craft, which I think is a celebration. We had a specific question about salary and benefits. They said, some people said great, and competitive salaries. Would hope that they could be, the teachers here and educators here could be compensated for all experience years, not just the 10 of our threshold. There are districts that do more. There are districts that do quite a bit less, right? Desire to earn more hours in support roles. There that showed up again. And then just someone that just very pointedly said, I'd love to see Kirkwood with a sick leave bank. As I'm retiring and leaving, I'm taking all these sick days with me, and they're doing me no good. I'd rather give them to a young teacher that could use them. Are there things that the district could have done to help be more effective? Increasing support outside academic departments. This one resonated with me. There was a lot of effort that was shared about folks that were a part of robust academic teams, your ELA department, your math department. But those singletons, that's what we call them at the building level, right? Your lone art teacher, or potentially your lone German teacher. That can be a lonely road if we don't connect those people across buildings vertically through departments. So it's another reminder for us that, while we assume everybody's found their people, both in terms of formal PLC work, but even those like informal mentors, don't ever want that to assume that that's the case. Offering of additional hours, again, this is coming up another way, another time, but in another way, this was an individual that just, not just the compensation of it all, but spoke to, if I were full-time, I was becoming so effective at what I was doing that I imagine the impact I could have made had I been able to stay for the whole day. So I thought that was an interesting thing to add. A lack of communication about student needs. I can speak to this one. Those plans that are put in place for students, those wraparound supports, those safety plans. If only we could share that out, right? School-wide. We functionally can. There always comes a point in time where that pair, that support staff member in the hallway that didn't know Johnny or Jenny's 3-step plan, and then they feel like they were left out of the loop. It's just the nature of the work that we do. We do our very best to communicate, but that always runs into the obstacle of some things are confidential until, that they're on a need to know with that stuff. So that resonated with me as a former principal. Allowing teachers to attend more workshops and giving voice in curriculum decisions. Again, I bring these up. We've got people that want to lean into the work, which is really a nice problem to have. Qualitative feedback on the way out. Any other comments? Lots of thanks to this organization, this board, the leaders that do the work. Just a real big thank you across the board. High praise. They took an opportunity to give shouts out to specific colleagues. This phrase, I think, resonated with me. That there were some, just obviously some issues that some former employees had with their supervisors. This person, I think, put it the most succinctly, at least for me in this work as a member of this cabinet. If we're not raising leaders to be more than managers, then that's really on us. That's not on the principals, and that's surely not on the employees. So to me, that helps us to kind of frame, the work that we want to do around visionary leadership and training up our principals. That's almost like a bumper sticker phrase right there, right? We don't need managers, we need leaders, right? And in connection, we want to build a culture of trust around that leadership. Making sure we're assessing all positions, wages are competitive, and making sure that all members of our Kirkwood family feel included in our organization. So what do we do with this? So first off, as I led, we've got to figure something out with that participation rate. I cannot bring 19 completed surveys to all of you next time. So that is, we are digging into that, really kind of finding out, ways that we might have missed. 1 and 2 are connected. We've engaged of late in in-person interviews, but there was a bit of disconnect in some of those in-person interviews. Then they were asked to then go ahead and complete the Google survey. Well, I don't blame those folks who took the time to meet in person. And then, well, why would I? So there was a disconnect there. So I wasn't able to share some of that feedback with all of you. So those are just easy fixes within our department to just get that calibrated. And I think the effort was there to do something new and get As I said before, we need to look at priority areas in our own department, but it's beholden on me to share that and members of our departments that are outside of HR. And then just always keeping an eye out on the survey questions. Do these questions tease out what we want to hear? And is there opportunity and need to change? Those are just 5 of the next steps that I can think of, beyond any that might come my way as we move to questions and comments. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Ms. Andrews?
Thank you. So one of the things that I have talked about in the past, just with trust being so important when surveys are given, and how the information is sought. Whether it's an outside survey company or a Google Doc or that kind of thing, it does impact the confidence in people to fill out the surveys. And so it's just kind of something that I want to bring up and bring to your attention. Thank you. And thank you for including next steps. I really appreciate that piece because it kind of gets us to the next.
What are we going to do with it?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Ms. Shern?
And I echo that. That was going to be one of my comments. Thank you for being open to using the data to improve. As with any organization and even us as individuals, we always have that room for growth. And so looking forward to what it looks like next year when you guys have a full year of being in your positions in this, leadership team. So thank you.
Mr. Caffey? Ms. Hepburn?
I appreciate you addressing the numbers of associated with our Black staff because that was definitely something that jumped out at me. But I did have a note in here that I used to work with surveys, so I understand what it means if you only have if you have one person that identifies a certain way and then I understand how that skews, but I don't know the number of people since the race demographic just showed 73% white or whatever, so I don't know if it was one person or 2 people or 3 people, but if it warrants looking into, that's something that was concerning. In general, ratings dipping across the board is concerning. I love how you've dug into this. I love the next steps. Something that I would love to see even sooner than next year is if there are any opportunities over this next school year to do a callback to this. I think something that our teachers and our community is really hungry for is to see a presentation like this, and then if in 2 months or 3 months you guys have done some change or taken on some initiative or there's some new program for the teachers, and we can call back to this and say, we heard this and that's one of the things that led to this positive change. I think that's the kind of thing that our community really wants to see, and that's going to demonstrate that we're listening and we're working for people. So it's not a directive, it's simply just, I think that's something that people would really respond to. So thank you very much.
Ms. Neiman?
Thank you. Really appreciate the call out to the response rate. I do agree that that's very important, and sometimes non-responsiveness or non-engagement can indicate negativity that people don't want to engage, and they're like, I'm out of here, I'm not coming back to that. One thing I did want to point out and kind of ask about is on slide 7, where you lay out the survey demographics, you kind of alluded to or kind of talked through a little bit the last row that talks about the average years of experience, and it appears that that's declined over the last several years. So to me, it looks like the survey recipients, regardless of the number of people that actually responded, the years of experience is going down for the people who are leaving the district. And I don't know if that, if you could quite call this a trend quite yet over the last couple of years, but it is a little concerning to me that are we seeing that maybe newer teachers or teachers with less experience under their belt are leaving sooner than they had in the past. So that might be a watch out to look at both the why and is there something we need to be doing in particular to be supporting our newer teachers? So I don't expect you to have an answer to that now. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that now, or if that's just something to kind of think through and see what we might do about that.
Yeah, I would say without firm numbers, I would give you anecdotal evidence. I believe failing to see the value of a journey taken in this work, whether it's not seeing, and I don't blame someone in their 20s
Right.
for seeing down the road for a pension that is unparalleled, you know, and any other line of work, especially in the state of Missouri. I would say the story we need to tell, though, is that we get to work with kids, and I don't think you can put a price on that. And so I think we do need to do our very best to tell that story, because there's tangible ways to compensate employees, and then there's just the joy of working with young people that I think somewhere post-COVID was lost in the story we tell about this work that we do, that we get to do, that we're blessed to do. And so you may or may not be touching a hot button issue with me, but yes, I think we all need to band together to make sure that young people recognize this is a great profession, it's a rewarding profession, it's one that allows you to be fairly compensated and gives flexibility to being able to do many other things. But yes, without going on and on at the time, there's other presentations waiting. I would say there is data to suggest this, but what I would say is jump to that next step. We need to tell a different story to our young people out here. We need to be talking to universities. When we hear about the rates of young people coming out of specific programs at UMSL, you know, at Maryville, it's alarming. It is.
Yeah, so sounds like it's worthwhile to look at whether or not this trend is kind of consistent with the trend we're seeing across the profession.
I think
And if
so.
that's the case, you know, what can we do, I guess regardless, what can we do to encourage and support our teachers that are coming into the profession, and how can we, you know, be an anomaly there and retain our teachers for our students? So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me expand on that a little bit. Glad I could cut that brief.
Ms. Hepburn, you had one more thing?
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't in my notes because it was something I thought of during, but Ms. Neiman reminded me of it. Is actually, in my experience, a lot of people don't take surveys if they feel positively because they don't have something to share. And they kind of think, well, I don't really have constructive feedback, and so they don't follow through with it. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but one of the things I was going to say is I don't know what the verbiage is in the email, but it's possible that that could be looked at more so than the survey itself. Or in the past, we've done things where there was we would prefer this is usable, this takes about this much time, but if you only want to answer 3 questions, this is this option, just to get something. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you for all of this. And I also I'm very impressed and very pleased. You've been in this position about 3 weeks, and you show so much insight and thought, and with next steps and everything. That's really exciting. So thank you. And also when we talk about, you know, Ms. Neiman made me think of this, when we talk about the teachers leaving earlier and fewer people going into the profession, things as simple as adding a section so you have fewer kids, that is something that, especially for a newer, younger teacher, can make a huge difference. So it all ties together. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
7:03, the student discipline report. Miss Dr. Bailey.
Had to come and change up the new guy show that was happening.
Oh, yeah.
So for the last several years, we've given a report at the end of the school year regarding the discipline that we have, and so I'm happy to show the board some positive trends in some areas and other specific areas that we're going to continue to work on. So a brief summary about this: there is still a district-wide commitment to the reduction of behavior incidents, ISS, OSS, and closing gaps among subgroups. We did see an increase in our ISS. However, as the board and the public will see, we did see a nice decrease in our OSS. So more students were staying in our buildings with access to services and fewer OSS. All of our levels do utilize restorative practices. There are still disproportionate gaps. However, we did see decreases occur in these areas, specifically around OSS. And we did, for this year, I wanted to make sure that we included some data on tardies, just so that the board and the public can see the large portion that takes up when it comes to office referrals and consequences that come through. So jumping into some of the data for explanations, The large blue bar is the total number of referrals that occurred during a school year. You can see we did see an increase in that number from 2234 to 2772 overall. However, the numbers that surround our black students and our students with IEPs and black students with IEPs, we did see a significant increase on the IEP side, but not much on the other two subgroups. And then the gray bar, just pulled off to the side, is the number of office referrals that we could figure out, because some of it, and I'll explain that in a moment as well, we could figure out that were related to tardies or skipping, also known as things that are not happening in a classroom, that's not dealing with the teacher and their interaction with the student, or behavioral pieces, and the other columns that are broken down there as well. So you can see a large number of our referrals are due to tardies. And the next slide will show this piece as well. What this is the number of those referrals that turned into an ISS. So one student could represent 50 of these, one student could represent one of these. It just depends. We didn't count one student only once. You'll see we did see an increase in the number of ISS incidents. However, on our subgroups, we didn't see that significant of an increase for our black students and our black students with IEPs. We did see students with IEPs ticked up a little bit as well. And again, from what we could ascertain based on our data, 172 of those were due to tardies. The reason why I say that is because we don't have a specific discipline code that's just for tardies or for skipping. And in the policy first read that's later today, you'll see that there's a proposal for that to be included. So we have some principals that are calling it, other misconduct. They may be calling it disrupting a learning environment. They may be calling it 2 or 3 different things when it comes to that. So the data point is hard for us to find, and we want to make sure that we're spelling out the consequences very clearly. Just for awareness, when it comes to tardies, for the high school specifically, tardies 1 through 9 just result in a warning during a semester. So it's just, hey, get to class, let's get going. Why are you running late? Tardies number 10 through 19 result in a 1-hour detention after school. An ISS doesn't start until someone's been tardy 20 times in one semester. So it's not just, hey, this is the second tardy, you're going straight to ISS. So when we see that that is, a large number of tardies that are occurring. Now, I will say, any of us that have walked the high school campus know that it is sometimes difficult to go from an art class to a science class with a full hallway in 6 minutes and to get there to and from. So there's some forgiveness when it comes to that, but there's also reasons why we don't start that until we hit a large number of those tardies. However, when you think about 172 of those, that means that at least 172 incidences of 20 or more tardies occurred during that time. So it is a point of emphasis for the high school. They've talked about that, especially for this year. We'll see how any of the discussion that we have at the next work session regarding cell phones has an impact on that in any way. I'm going to guess that our bathrooms are suddenly going to become more used during passing periods by our students that are having a little fear of missing out, or FOMO, whenever they're passing through. So we did see an increase in ISS. Now, I do want to say, when it comes to students who receive ISS, they still have access, because they're in the building, they still have access to our counselors, they still have access to our social workers, they still have access to our therapists, and they're still required, if possible, to receive their special education services. We say if possible because some of those services might be replacement curriculum or direct pull-out service, but usually our special educators are going to meet the students in those rooms, going to meet the students where they're at. And in many cases, if the teachers are okay with it, our principals will even allow the teacher to request that student actually come to their class during a period of time during ISS to get the instruction that they need. So it is less restrictive than our OSS setting. So I am happy to show that there has been a significant decrease. Now, one thing you'll notice that in previous years, I've put 4, 5, or 6 years of data up here. Dr. Rich said the C word that we don't want to go back and say 3 or 4 times when it comes to COVID, but I did go ahead because that data was so skewed. We just pulled that off and started with the first full year that we had after that incident. So there's only 4 data points that are up here, but you can see that in terms of OSS, very, very positive progress with that. Only 106 office referrals turned into an OSS. The numbers for the subgroups are all decreased as well. And because some of these students might be counted more than once, you'll see a slide later that shows the percent of our district that did not get suspended or that did get suspended. But I can tell you that this is comprised of 65 students across the entire district. Good and bad. Good in that means there are thousands who didn't receive any OSS. And I won't say bad, but an opportunity for us is that with 65 students across 8 buildings, there's an opportunity for us to follow up individually with each one of those students and figure out the why behind that suspension and really learn about, making sure we don't have repeat offenses or future occurrences that are occurring. We get a little bit more tricky when it comes to some of the data that's breaking down here. So I'll explain. The bars on the left would indicate the percent of our district enrollment that is made up by our Black African American students. So this past school year, 8.7% of all of our enrollment were our Black students. However, 30% of all of our referrals comprised of Black students. Now that is a decrease, but you can see it's a very simplistic way of looking at it. You would assume that if it's 8.7% of our total population, should be 8.7% of our referrals, 8.7% of each of those consequences. The numbers for ISS and OSS for the population did go down. ISS a lot specifically when it comes, and if you remember that we actually saw an increase in ISS, but the percent for our students, our Black students definitely went down, and the same for OSS, that percent went down. Again, a student may be counted more than once in this, but I'll show a chart where we just count students one time. The same sort of data explanation for our students with IEPs. They comprise 13.5% of our district, but 30.6% of our referrals, 33.8% of our ISS, and then 53.7% of OSS. Unfortunately for some of our students, they may have some significant behaviors that are a part of or a function of their disability that may lead to some out-of-school suspensions. Those students do get additional protections that are in place through a manifestation process and through other special education protocols that are in place, but those protections don't start until day 10 of an out-of-school suspension. And so for some of our students, they may have only gotten 1 or 2 or 3 days, but our staff do provide those supports for them to take a look at. So this is a little bit different where we only count one student one time. So if a student got 5 suspensions, they're only counted once. If they got 1 suspension, they're only counted once. And you can see across our entire district, only 1.1% of our students had an OSS, which means 98.9% of our students across the district did not get suspended out of school during the school year. It's a great number. You can see that number has gone down consistently over the last 4 years, and I'll talk about some of the reasons why we believe that's happening. In addition, you can see that 5.2% of our Black population had an OSS, much closer to that overall percentage when it comes to the 1.1 than some of those other gaps during the ISS and OSS. And then you can see, and again, a nice steady decrease, almost half of what it was in prior years. And then for our percent of students with IEPs receiving OSS, again, you can see that dip down to 4.1% of all of our OSS was comprised of students, all of our students with IEPs, only 4.1% received an OSS. So each of those data points trending downward, it is indicative, again, of some of our students that get more than one suspension or more than one office referral, comprising some of these data points. And I do want to touch point on a couple things that we think we're working for some of these data that's here. We had an increased emphasis on restorative practice training. We had many, many groups that went through our restorative practice trainings. We did many 2 half-day sessions, and then we also did 1 full-day session. Dr. Rich was talking about feedback. We had some feedback that said this would be great across 1 day, so we split it into 2 days. And then we got feedback on the 2 days that said this would be great just in 1 day. So we can't win either way. But we had a large number of our staff that have gone through that, and we'll continue to offer that. District-wide, we had in our district-wide PD day after winter break, we had Dr. Candace Cox come and present on trauma and on the ways that can impact. So all of our staff, including support staff, received that training during that time, and then she did additional follow-up with the high school. We're also working with Special School District on our what's called CEIS, Coordinated Early Intervention Funds. We are required by DESE and by the federal government for now to be able to provide some of that funding, and we get funds allocated for us, and so we're looking at ways to increase our professional development, specifically around some alternative programming and specifically around discipline. There's a couple conferences that we're looking at taking a large number of folks to, and then setting up some mentoring programs with some of our successful graduates, being able to have some touch points with our students during the process, just to give them some counseling and support. And somebody that they can connect with. We do review this information with our principals on a monthly basis. We do give directives to continue to look at multiple offenders and to really review a student and really make a very educated decision when it comes to looking at a consequence for a student. What other ways can we look at keeping kids in classrooms as much as possible? And I will say that the number one thing that I attribute to seeing this decrease is sitting behind me. Our teachers are fantastic, and our teachers are very strong at what they do, and our teachers are very, very good at working with our students. They don't want to see students put out of their classrooms. They don't want to see students put out of the school. They don't want to see students who are not getting the support they need. But as teachers, they also need the support they need to be able to provide the support for those students and to give them adequate adjustments in class. So some of this is professional development for our teachers as well, and those that have had some students that have struggled have been very open to that PD and those experiences. So we do want to thank the teachers. They're a huge part of why that number has gone down. So I'm happy to take any questions that the board has.
Ms. Andrews?
I would just say thank you, Dr. Bailey, for all your good work.
I was still writing my question. I thought it was going to Lisa.
Uh-oh.
But no, you're good. Thank you for this information. I do want to point out one thing is language matters, and I would like to offer, instead of us using subgroups, that we use student groups.
Okay.
I know that that has been updated in MSIP 6, and going forward, it's just language, right? When we talk about sub, it's below, it's beneath, and sometimes those little things that we don't know can help change how we come forth. So that's just one thing. Secondly, I know it's gone down, and thank you for letting us know some of the things that are in place. But like overall, let me see, which one is this? Like the overall OSS, it's decreased. Well, it decreased last year, but still African American students and those with IEPs, they still represent almost 50% or more of that number. So I know you said restorative practices and those things that are helping. Just, it's been the story we've had for a number of years. So just glad to see that the numbers are decreasing, but looking forward to seeing more things being done.
Mr. Caffey?
Yeah, so I think there's areas of improvement, but also some things to celebrate within this. So where my head goes, just as a board member, is kind of down two paths. Like the metric in our strategic plan is office referrals for African Americans and students with IEPs. And then we have strategies. So I would just offer, as we look to develop the strategic plan for this coming school year, and then the larger plan going forward is, are we chasing the correct metric here? Also, if this is so largely influenced by getting from art to science over the course of a school day, are we chasing the right metric? Because if not, if we are, then do we need to look at altering the strategies? And as you look at the strategies within our plan, I don't think anybody's debating where we're spending our time, right? So just a thought, I don't have the answer there, but as we formulate this coming plan that we'll be looking at here pretty soon, and the larger 5-year plan going forward, is just, are we chasing the right data point? Because there are some things that reflect that some of our strategies are making a positive impact. So.
And I will say one reason why we do highlight the office referrals is under the assumption that that's where most of the consequences start, meaning most of the kids come into the office. However, the discrepancy between the number that actually result in OSS or ISS versus the number of referrals does tell me there's a big gap in office referrals maybe here and those punitive consequences maybe down here. So in some ways it's good that we're not pursuing that, but in other ways they're still being sent to the office and missing some class time. So I do think that there's lots of different metrics that go with it.
Just from the board member seat, what we would like to see is either if we're not making progress on the metric we're chasing, that our strategies change, or we reflect back and say, we believe in this work. We do see some areas that are reflective of our strategies working, and we kind of recalibrate there. So thank you.
Ms. Hepburn?
Yeah, Ben almost said my note verbatim. I was looking at our strategic goals, and I was matching them up with what we're seeing here, and I had the same thought of either we need to change our strategy or change our metric. I did want to say, I wanted to call out the good that of anything, if I could see us do any improvement with regards to discipline, obviously it's decreasing out of school suspensions because that's what harms students the most. So that I'm so happy to see that because we want to keep kids in school. So that is great. I did find it interesting that the ISS is so much higher while the OSS decreases. It's hard not to wonder if maybe some of those numbers are just getting shifted around, especially since we're seeing the referrals not decrease. So it's just hard to get a clear picture here. And with regards to the tardies and kind of tied in with what Mr. Caffey was saying with the metrics and the coding, I don't know how it works, but I don't know if it would be beneficial to see if we're moving the dial in certain areas of issues more than others. Another metric that I would personally be interested in after looking at this data 2 years is reduction in repeat referrals since we're looking at these individual kids, because I mean if there's a way for us to intervene and use restorative practices and like support these students in a way that, you know, we can get ahead of it, again, that's probably looking ahead to the next strategic plan. And then the other thing I would just say, and I think you're going to be here for the next presentation as well, but I did notice that there was an increase in discipline being a concern in the family exit surveys. So when I'm pairing all this together, I'm just feeling like it seems like we need to step back and just see what we can do differently.
Ms. Neiman.
Man, it's kind of hard to go last sometimes because everyone makes great points that you kind of check off on your own. Yeah, no, I totally agree with Ms. Hepburn about the interest or concerns around discipline. And so I appreciate us having this information, but also agree that maybe doing a deeper dive and breaking it down in different ways could be beneficial for us to not only see how the actions or strategies are affecting our metrics, but also if we need to be looking at different, like looking at coming at the strategies differently. So I think if we can maybe dig a little bit deeper by breaking the data down in different ways, it could be helpful. You mentioned earlier that maybe we don't have the cleanest data on some of it, and maybe I'm reading into it, but
No, you're
that
correct.
sometimes
Yeah.
the data points might be difficult to really pin down. So if there's a way, you know, thinking things like clearer data on the type of discipline issues that we're actually seeing. So if is there a way to kind of code that clear and reflect that coding in the data? And then also maybe breaking things out by something like age or kind of building level.
Sure.
So is it elementary, middle, high school? That might give us better insights into what we're actually seeing. So to Mr. Caffey's point, you know, is it kids are having a hard time getting from one class to another in a certain amount of time, or is it some bigger issue that we're,
Right.
you know, we're seeing trends on? And I don't know if you had any kind of put any thought to breaking out. Do you have that data available, or is that
I
become
would
really
say
difficult?
yes, and so one reason why later on the first reading for the discipline updates includes not only requirements around Senate Bill 68 for cell phone and personal electronic devices, but we did want to call out tardies and skipping in particular, because those are things that aren't necessarily connected. I'm not going to say 100% not connected, but they're potentially not connected to a teacher-student interaction or other students in the classroom. And so being able to pull that out would give us an opportunity to really dive a little deeper into that particular data. In our EduClimber system and the way that things get coded, we do see all the comments and we do see all the reasons why students were referred, so we can pull those things out. I will say some teachers, those of you that have been know this, that some teachers are very verbose on their office referral and others are very succinct on their office referral. And so sometimes it's hard to get to the true core concern of what may be having a kid come to class or come to the office for a specific situation. And I will also say, having worked with these teachers and coached these teachers and supported these teachers, many of our teachers are doing everything that they can think of to not have a kid leave class. And so really part of our work moving forward with other additional strategic plans is going to be what support do the teachers need. They're tremendous at what they do, but some of our students, especially coming out of 4 or 5 years ago now, those students are now in first grade, second grade, third grade, having grown up in a different world. And some are experiencing just what I like to call big emotions, big behaviors. And you'll see that that's somewhat reflected on that family exit survey as well. That some of the folks believe that we're not being harsh enough in some cases, and others think that we're being too harsh. It depends on the situation. So I think we can pull it out. We do have data. We can drill it all the way down. We've done a live show of EduClimber in the past, but we can drill it all the way down to even the hour that it was recorded in the office and what time it was and the building, day of the week, all those things. We do see a lot happens on a Monday because they're kind of catching up from everything that happened the week before. But yeah, we can certainly break all those pieces down and then continue to drill down to even see specific students and patterns through there as well. So.
Yeah, and of course, you'd want to consider that based on the value add.
Right.
So if you're, looking at the data and seeing what really highlights things that we need to think about differently.
Yeah, and I will say at our building level, our buildings do have data teams that do that work on a weekly or sometimes even bi-weekly basis, that they are drilling down to that level with their individual grades or their individual teams or even during their PLC work. So our buildings are doing a lot of that work. We may not just as necessarily reflect it in this type of summary for you all, but they are accessing that very frequently. So.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Shern?
Yeah, I just real quick wanted to add to Ms. Neiman about disaggregating that data, because possibly breaking it down by teacher, because sometimes, if there's a certain teacher that is constantly referring children, like that's another data point to say what we need to do, because learning doesn't happen absence of relationships. And so just ensuring that they have that support and that and then kids with the tardies, kids aren't late. I remember getting to the classes that I loved on time because I didn't want to miss something. So even looking at those instructional practices, what's happening in the classroom, and seeing how we as the adults in the space can improve them for our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey, and I echo much of what has already been said. I have one question and one request.
Sure.
I'm really happy that you have pulled out the tardies, because that really clarifies things. I would think that maybe next year it would be good to pull out the tardies and the cell phone things. I'm sure it will work like clockwork.
I don't think we're gonna have zero cell phone
But
issues. What are you talking about?
Just a thought. And especially with the tardies, because that's a really high number. I know some kids are tardy because they're busy in the hall and it doesn't matter to them if they're late. But, I had a kid who was consistently late to first hour. It drove me nuts, and then I found out that it was a problem with how he was getting to school. And so, I don't want that kid punished because of something out of his control. And so if we can, look at some of those things as well. And I'm sure the grade level principals and everyone is already doing that. But I just wanted to put that on your radar.
Yeah. And I can respond to, so with our early warning system, part of that is fed by tardies and by absences and attendance. And Sarah Gibbs, who's our intensive support counselor, takes the lead on kind of triaging all of those. And so we go straight to the support side. We're not looking at the punitive piece and digging into the why. But I agree that when we start looking at, especially when we have late arrivals allowed for that first hour, some students think that it means later than late arrival, or they may not find a parking spot. I know that never happens at the high school either, but I think that there are lots of factors that go into it. But I would agree that digging into the why is just as important as to other patterns that follow up.
Thank you.
And the cell phone piece I think you were referring to is that we're doing a policy first read of having a specific discipline code for cell phones. I think we haven't had that in the past.
Right.
So
It'll be fun.
that's a good way to put it.
Moving right along to 7.04, the exit survey from families. Again, Dr. Bailey.
So this is something that we started, I think, 4 years ago when we were looking at our exit survey data. And so we have used the same survey for several years. I will tell you that we had the highest number of responses this year, which was 69. I did hear that some folks thought, or some folks reported that they may have missed out last year. Sometimes, depending on when they transfer, or the date of their transfer may impact whether they get this. And we always try to make up for it with either the follow-up. So this data that you'll see, so the data only includes students who started out with us last year and left either at some point or are not coming back for this upcoming school year. So they were in our schools on day one of the 24-25 school year. The survey respondents would include those. I backed that all the way up to somebody who might have left May 1st, just because there was some concern that if someone left May 31st or they may not have gotten a survey. So we did back that up a little bit. So when we look at the quantitative side, meaning the survey responses of dissatisfied or satisfied, that is backed up to May 1st, but the transfer numbers only includes those students who were starting with us and then didn't finish the school year or are not coming back. You'll see the total number of transfers is lower than previous years. This does get updated for those of you that haven't seen this or don't necessarily look forward to the enrollment presentation, but we do update that because there are some students that might have left today that are not a part of the presentation for this today. And then the data will obviously change. So we do break this out by the type of transfer that we have. So this is transfer out of state to a public school. So this is usually somebody that had to relocate. You can see we've always had positive numbers and numbers that have gone down. This number, I'm sure, will change as we get closer to the start of the school year. One of the things that we're required to do by the state of Missouri is that if a student leaves our school, we hold on to them as an enrollment until we get the official request from somebody else. And so until we get that official request, they're still technically a Kirkwood student, even though they may have physically moved to Virginia or Washington State. Until that school sends us that request, we don't withdraw or drop those students. One of the reasons why DESE did that is because they wanted to track by MOSIS numbers, identification numbers, individual kids, and not have schools artificially inflate their enrollment or their dropout numbers by just saying, nope, they're not here anymore. Or to withdraw kids suddenly right before MAP testing or EOC testing, which some people did back in the day. And so this number I'm sure will change from 2, but that is our out-of-state. This is transferred to public school in-state, and right now it's at 24. Again, this is likely due to somebody moving out of the district, and so those are not necessarily things within the control that they have, that this is across the state of Missouri. We did leave the one COVID number in there. I may in the future pull it off, but it is very standing out, and that during that year we had 95 transfer to homeschool. Many of those came back, but you can see that our homeschool has trended back towards what we've typically had, anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10 with homeschool students. There has been an update, just so the board's awareness as well, an update when it comes to homeschool students being able to participate in athletics. That used to have many more restrictions. That has now been opened up significantly. So some folks that maybe stayed for one specific reason may look at homeschool for a variety of reasons in there. So homeschool numbers are down. The one we pay the most attention to, because these are the students who we believe still live in Kirkwood but are choosing to go to a private school, are the transfers to private schools. So our most updated number is 72. Again, that is as of last week. That likely will change as we get closer to the beginning of the school year, but we have seen a downward trend in those numbers since from a peak on this chart from 2020 to 2021 at 135 down. I will say, and the board will see this when I do the enrollment presentation, the majority of those transfers occur after 5th grade before middle school and after 8th grade before high school. So that's usually when those are happening. It's not always, but that's the majority of our transfer numbers. So the total transfers out, you can see again, that number will get adjusted, but we have seen a downward trend during the course of several years when we look at that. So the good news when we have that is that we have people that are staying in Kirkwood, people that are moving to Kirkwood, and then people that are remaining in here as well. But we'll update this number as we get the official enrollment numbers. You can see that we have had a downward trend the last couple years in our overall enrollment. And then the numbers Dr. Rich presented are likely trending that way as well. Not huge, but a slight dip. So lower transfer numbers may also be related to just overall lower enrollment. Now we dive into the questions that we've asked. And again, this did get our highest number of respondents, 69. Not all of them answered every question. Some of them may have skipped. And we group these in either very dissatisfied, satisfied, neutral, or satisfied, very satisfied. I'm very happy to report that this year the majority of every one of these questions is skewed towards the green, and in some a change from previous years. So in our academic programs, we don't necessarily specify high school, middle school, elementary. We just talk about what's your satisfaction with our academics, and you can see very much skews towards the satisfied or very satisfied realm in this. Special education programs, mostly neutral, and that's likely due to their just not accessing special ed services, but the ones that either showed an opinion either way, it was, again, skewed towards the green in terms of satisfied or very satisfied. Administration, this is one that's actually improved. We don't specify district or building level, but I'm guessing most folks focus on their principals at the building level, although I will say that in a couple of the comments, not all principals were the only ones mentioned. So myself being one. And so in the administration, you can see that most of the numbers skew towards the satisfied, very satisfied with that. This is not surprising because a lot of times parents will report concerns. You'll see another question about addressing your concerns. That's usually related to administration. However, very well earned is that our people are very satisfied with our teachers. You can see very much, not even close, skewing that direction. I don't know who thinks neutral when it comes to that, but very satisfied overall when it comes to the teachers and the support that they provide for our students in class. Extracurriculars, it's not a deterrent for our students. There are very many options that are available, again, very much skewing towards the satisfied, very satisfied. This one is an improvement from prior years. In prior years, the red and the green were actually flipped, and we had more that were dissatisfied with communication from administrators than we have this year. This year, we have much more on the satisfied, very satisfied when it comes to communication with administrators, and even some of those that are neutral there. And then communication with teachers, again, very strong when it comes to satisfied, very satisfied. Discipline, you guys had mentioned earlier, just questions around discipline. There's still a level of satisfaction, but you can see when compared just to the one before it, when we compare it to just the teachers and the consensus that folks have around the support they're getting from teachers, this one is a little bit more evened out when it comes to discipline. And there are some comments in the board report, or sorry, comments in the open questions that come through specifically to discipline. Addressing your concerns, this one kind of goes hand in hand with how they feel about administrators. You can see that, again, this was flipped last year to where the addressing your concerns was actually more red than green. And this year you can see that it's satisfied, very satisfied is higher. Of every chart that will show, this one and the administrator one has the least amount of variance between very satisfied and dissatisfied. So those two really play a key in some cases for people in their decisions. Safety and security, people overall feel very safe when it comes to our schools, skews very strongly in that direction. I do want to specifically talk that there are 3 open-ended questions that are offered to everybody. Not everyone has to answer. You don't have to answer every question. So if you're going through and doing the math, not every one of these adds up to all the exact same numbers. But there are 3 questions that we ask that people are able to answer if they choose to. First one, how would you describe the Kirkwood School District to your friends, family, and neighbors? And so we get some comments from folks that are in there. A lot of those comments were very positive. Things like great school district, met the needs of my kids, wonderful place to be, great traditions. There are some that expressed things about not necessarily getting support or getting some of the responses that they needed from administrators or teachers about specific issues. But that's the first question that we ask. Second question, are there specific areas of concern or ways that we can improve? And so that data is shared with our administrators as well, but many of the folks in there said positive information as well, like, nope, love Kirkwood School District, and for example, every person in my family's gone to Vianney, so I'm going to Vianney, or I have to move, or we had to change for a job. But overall, the satisfaction, even in those open comments, was higher than we've had in previous years, and could be due to the number, could just be to folks sending in their information. So to your comment earlier, I was pleasantly happy that people were being positive about the school on these surveys, because usually someone that had a great experience is like, no, I'm good, and they move it on. Others that are like, I can't wait to fill this thing out. So, but it is open, and those, we don't collect email addresses. However, there is a 4th question that if somebody wants to put their name to their comments, they can, and we did have about half the people that did that. A lot of times we'll follow up specifically if there are concerns that we can figure out based on those comments. And then the third comment just really is there anything else you want us to know? And we got a lot of positive praise in a lot of those comments as well. However, there are specific things that people talk about their individual experiences or maybe some overarching things. I kept the slide up about discipline because there were several comments about that, leaning more towards, like I said earlier, that we're not being punitive enough in some cases, or that we're not, to put it very mildly, what somebody wrote, I think, putting a kid out when they should be put out, or dealing with things in that respect, and that they felt like there was a safety issue or a concern around student discipline. Again, you can see the numbers of students that the offenses are resulting in an actual out-of-school suspension very low across the district, but they may have had an individual experience that created a struggle for them or their child that was in school, and they chose a different path. So, and I'm happy to take any questions. One of the things that I do want to report is we do share this information with our principals. I'm happy to see that there are improvements in areas that we shared last year with principals, specifically around communication. That was a point in our strategic plan as well for our principals to work on that. We even brought in, not necessarily the group you think about coming in to talk about communication, but our attorneys came in to talk about communication and just being focused on what you're communicating and how you're communicating that. And I know Steph and her team frequently work with our principals around messaging and ways to say things, and our principals know they can reach out to her if they've got questions. But a lot of the communication also circles back to not just what we're communicating, but how, and just continuing to emphasize, pick up the phone, see people in person, make those personal connections at family nights, and do as much as you can regarding that communication. But that was a point of emphasis from last year, so I was happy to see that we saw improvement based on the surveys this year. So, and I'm happy for any questions.
Ms. Neiman?
Great, thanks. Really also happy to see improvements in those different areas, and it is cool to see that in some places what had been negative maybe flipped to positive, kind of on the whole. But I do appreciate that we continue to send out these surveys, and that we, whether it's for families leaving the district, whether it's for staff, it's important for us to pay attention to the feedback that we're getting and continuously seek feedback so that we can continuously improve. So really appreciate that we're doing that. My one question for this survey in particular is around the process for sending out the survey when a student is going to transfer. I know you mentioned kind of at the beginning of your presentation some timing around when
Sure.
you find out and all that. Can you just talk through that process?
Yeah, so I will say that every one of those surveys comes out directly from me, and so what we do is I pull all of the data. I put a date in our system that said, did you leave between this date and this date? So if they left, I'll go back to, if somebody's transfer out officially said that they left from May 1st to July 1st, then we would go ahead and they would be included in the survey. If they left on July 2nd or July 3rd, they wouldn't necessarily be included on this year's survey, but I would ensure that I back that up far enough next year for them to be able to provide an option to be able to do that. It's not closed, and so I'll probably circle back. Last year, I went back and pulled it closer to the beginning of the school year and resent it out just to give people an additional opportunity to provide some feedback. And so I'll take a look to see how different our numbers are between July 1st and August 15th, for example, to see how many more people maybe need to get that, and send it out again just to make sure that people have an opportunity. We're not trying to miss anybody or purposely avoid getting any feedback, but sometimes it's just the way that by the time the survey goes out and when we're reporting this and when somebody transfers. The other part that I was saying is that somebody may have already physically moved to another state or another district, but until their new school requests the records from us, which could be super fast or could be super slow, we keep them on our roster, so they may not actually show up as a transfer yet until that new school requests their records from us. And so that may put a delay in them being able to do this as well.
So does the survey go out kind of generally one time a year, is that what you're saying, or do you do it kind of once a month or something?
We haven't
What's
done it
the
once a month. We
process?
usually do it one time
Once
a
a
year,
year.
just so
Okay.
we can capture the whole year.
Got it.
But last year we did kind of a catch-up between July 1st and August 15th, and I'll probably do that again this year as well. So.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that
Well,
follow-up,
August 20th, whatever the second day of school is. So
that's great. I think that follow-up is important to capture people because you said there are so many life circumstances
Yep.
that happen. Thank you.
Ms. Hepburn?
Is the main reason we just send that survey out once a year just the workload of it, of just the management?
No, usually whenever we're seeing students that are leaving, they're usually leaving around specific breaks, meaning that they'll stay until semester or they'll stay through the entire school year. We don't have many that leave on a monthly basis, for example. And so we could send it out on a monthly basis, but I would worry that maybe I'd pull somebody twice. And so being able to send it out once a year does at least consolidate a large time frame of folks, but there's nothing stopping us from sending it out more frequently.
My other question would be, if we're doing it once a year, are we sure we're doing it at the right time of year? Because, I mean, what time, are we sending it out in July? When are we?
No, usually, yeah, right around July 1st. Literally the second day of July, I grab that information and send it out, and then leave it open till about a week ago. And so-
Yeah, because I mean, as a mother of 3 in July,
You're busy.
it's rough. Yeah, and I can't help but wonder if timing when it's fresh in school mode of I've made the decision, I'm leaving, you know what I mean, more
Sure.
at the end of the school year. I'm just wondering if we could, and it sounds like we had good survey responses this time, but it's just something I'm thinking about from a data standpoint. But beyond that, I did want to call out, I'm so happy always with this presentation because I love seeing our transfers out decrease. It's yet another one of my pet peeves and talking points all the time in the community is this idea of people are leaving public schools in droves, people are leaving Kirkwood in droves. The data is the data. It's just not true. And so I love being able to have these cold, hard facts on it. So I really greatly appreciate that. I did want to say, so and I know you said there's been some improvement, but on the questions around satisfaction with the administration, and then also the communication with the administration, and then concerns addressed, those 3 slides. Those were the 3 that had more of this look to it. I went back and looked at last year's, and they were a similar proportion. And so I didn't know if that was something that, is this another opportunity where we can take this and say, go back to the community sometime over the next year? And I know you were just talking about the communication things that were done with the principals, and I'm sorry I missed if that was just over the past year or if that was recently, like this summer.
No, that was based on the data we got from this survey last year. We were intentional about it during the entire school year.
Right. So yeah, just more stuff like that, because it would just be great to see every single one of those slides be as good as what our teachers do. So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Caffey? Ms. Shern?
I'm good, but kind of to piggyback off of Ms. Hepburn, I know you mentioned with the administration it wasn't separated from building leadership versus district leadership, and I think that would be a good data point to have as well, just to see how people are doing and even be able to give constructive feedback to building leaders.
Ms. Andrews?
So just to kind of address the, kids leaving, I think it's really important that we recognize that there are 110 kids that did leave. And if one kid is leaving because they don't feel like they belong here or their family doesn't feel like they belong here, that is one too many kids. Every single kid should feel like they belong here. And I think that is extremely important. And then the other piece to that is when we look at Dr. Coffrin's data and all of his stuff, he has a capture rate, and that really looks at how many kids are born in our area and how many of those kids are we capturing into our public school. So it's not only the fact that we need to be looking at who's leaving our district, but we also need to be looking at, are we capturing these
Meaning some that never even started with us.
Exactly. So Thank you again, Dr. Bailey.
Real quick, and I'm really happy with this response rate. But one question I had, because I was actually doing some math, if we have 110 kids who transferred out, do we know how many families that is?
I could probably look that up, yes.
Because that could even
Yeah.
improve our response rate. You know, if it's a family of 5 kids who
Right.
moved to California, I'm doing math. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I will, that's a great point. I'll check that out.
Eight 8.01, policy review, second reading and approval. I need a motion to approve the policies submitted as presented.
So move. Kathy?
Second, Sharn.
Is there any discussion on these? I got nothing in emails from anybody. So I think we move on to a vote. All those in favor of approving the policies, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Now, 8.02 is our first reading of policy draft JG-R1, student discipline. And there are a couple new things here. Normally, we don't have a big discussion with the first reading, but I think there will be questions about this. So the big things, the 2 new aspects to this policy are Standard 18, which Dr. Bailey already referred to, about the new discipline plan for excessive tardies, skipping class, and skipping school. And I encourage everyone to review that. It's highlighted on the document. The other thing that is new is the Standard 19, use or display of electronic personal communication devices. And this is a state law, so it's not like we have a lot of flexibility with the policy itself. Where we have flexibility is with the discipline plan, just like with the tardies. So I would encourage us all to review that. And I will say that next Monday, when we all meet again, it's a work session. We will be discussing this. We will also then move into a business meeting so we can vote on it and approve it, so it is in place before school starts. And along with that, since I know there are going to be probably some questions from the community about how this all happens, I believe, Ms. Diedrich, you're going to give us next week a little preview of the communication plan. And we are eager for that. So thank you. And that is policy. Future events. As I mentioned, we have a board work session on next Monday. Next week also begins new teacher orientation. August 11th is the teacher work day. August 12th is the big opening day at the Keating Center. Then we have staff development days. The first day of school is August 19th. And we have a board business meeting on August 25th. And I think we're adjourned. Less than 2 hours.